Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Sylvia Garcia, Leticia Van de Putte, and Judith Zaffirini. Good to see you. Thank you. Put you right over there. Thank you, ma'am. Good to see you. Put you there. Senator, thank you very much. Good to see you. Please, welcome to the three of you. Thank you for being here. So we are fewer than 60 days from the end of the session. A lot of work still to do, but I think we have a pretty good sense of what kind of a session it's been so far. And there are a lot of people who think it's been, relative to expectations, a Kumbaya session. Not a whole lot of soap opera drama in the Senate, people getting along, very few votes that have been super contentious, unlike that messy House. I wonder, Senator Van de Putte, if that is your impression from the inside of how things have gone so far.
I think having a focused agenda and emergency items that aren't toxic. You know, when you start out a legislative session and there are egregious themes with regard to sanctuary cities, anti-immigrant, voter ID, for us last year, the sonogram bill, the things that were on the emergency calendar that we addressed at the very beginning, really, I think, set a tone that was divisive. And of course, you know, the revenue situation from last time. But I think elections matter. And we are not seeing that type of legislation that would put us really divided at the very beginning. We're working together because we're focused on the job at hand and not on the items of the periphery that are just political rhetoric.
Senator Zaffirini, in fact, it was noted by a lot of us that there were no emergency items this session, unlike last session. Senator Van de Putte named a few that definitely blew the Senate and the House both up. But we started off without emergency items. There haven't been a whole lot of divisive issues put before all of you, so maybe it's not that surprising that it's been relatively calm.
That's exactly right. That has made all the difference in the world. Yeah. And the fact is that we have been able to focus on the priorities that matter to each senator. Yeah. And Governor Dewhurst has let the Senate be the Senate. And each senator has had the opportunity to focus on priority issues such as higher education, early childhood education, transportation, the environment, whatever is important to that Senate. Right. And even in the Finance Committee. Last session, there were a lot of controversies related to finance. This time, under Tommy Williams, each member of the Finance Committee has been free to address the priorities of that particular senator relative to funding. Is
that the difference, Senator, that it was Ogden then and it is Williams now, and so there's a new sheriff in town? Is that what it is?
Well, it's been wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful. Not only has Senator Williams done a wonderful job, but every subgroup leader has also done a wonderful job. And equally important, the witnesses have been terrific. Yeah. Witnesses have offered compelling testimony. Last session, I had the impression that there were some witnesses who had been ordered by the powers that be to hold back. The powers that be meaning their own bosses. Right. And we felt that they weren't communicating with us effectively and honestly. Right. This time, they did.
Not so. Yeah,
they were compelling, they were honest, they were thorough, they were wonderful. Great. To give you a perfect example, tuition revenue bonds. At the beginning of the session, key members of the Senate expressed opposition. There were people who said, TRBs don't have a prayer. Yeah. The presidents of the universities were so thorough and so convincing in their testimony that we're having the hearing at 9 o'clock today.
Right, they probably turned some points of view around.
Absolutely.
Senator Garcia, you're new to the Senate, but not new to public life.
You've noticed.
I have. But I think that you have some perspective a little bit different from Senator Van de Putte and Senator Zaffirini. You've been outside the Senate for a long time, and so you've been able to observe it from the outside. Is it different than you thought it was going to be in the 30 days you've been there in terms of how people have been able to get along?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for putting this nice anniversary breakfast for me together.
All for you, Senator.
Thank you so much. It helps me kick off my 30th day. Yeah. It's different than I expected, only in the sense that I find it a little bit different than all my previous positions. I think I've been very impressed with the level of collegiality. Yeah. By example, I probably had 1 or 2 meals perhaps with all my colleagues and commissioners court at any one given time. And in the Senate, we do that every day. I mean, I think that really helps communication. Yep. I think it's different because, in another way, because as commissioner, I had the ability to put any item on the agenda that I wanted for my precinct and for my priorities. Here it's different because you really don't. You've got to go through a process to do that, right. But it seems to be open and fair for the moment. For me, I haven't filed a bill yet, but I think everyone is ready for me to do that next week so that they can suspend rules and allow me to do it.
Give you an opportunity to play.
Yeah, correct. Right. And I've been able to tag on to other bills. I've been able to do an amendment. So right. I think everyone has been more than helpful, and it's been very welcoming. So it's been a good 30 days.
First start, good. Senator Van de Putte, let me come at this in a different way. So I said it's been kind of a Kumbaya Senate. Another way to look at that is that a lot of us expected, with the departure of the 5 senators and the arrival of Campbell and Paxton and Taylor and Hancock and Schwertner, that the Senate would be, as a body, more conservative than it was last session, and that there might be actually some more issues on which the divisions were clear. We had Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst come off of a Senate race in which he was perceived by some in his party to be insufficiently conservative, and therefore many of us assumed he would have to prove his conservative bona fides in this Senate. And Senator Zaffirini, your removal as head of the Higher Education Committee, the installation of Senator Patrick as the head of the Public Ed Committee seemed to confirm that Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst might actually faint right this session. But in fact, it seems to me that the Senate has not behaved in a way where the party politics or the partisanship has been really out front. In fact, there seems to be an effort to agree and get along a little bit more on a lot of issues. There were only 2 no votes. We'll come to you, Senator, as to why you were one of them on the budget. There seems to be general agreement about water. There even seems to be general agreement in opposition to some of the public ed proposals that have been put forward. I mean, it's not a real polarized session, Senator. Why is that?
When you're facing a big election year with the presidency and a lot of the U.S. Seats up, whether it's the Senate, of course, all of Congress here, folks have to make their statement. But Evan, I don't know how we could be more conservative than the horrendous budget cuts that were taken last legislative session. I think that what you see in the Senate is, it was a brutal session. It was toxic. It was, we work together, we know each other's families, we know each other's children and spouses. We really do work because we're only 31. What happens when you get things that tug at your heart, that rip you apart?
Yeah.
And that's what happened with a huge amount of the anti-immigrant themes that were brought up, the legislation that was brought up last legislative session. You know, there are certain issues that you understand, that it philosophically, politically, how senators are going to fight for those issues.
People are going to see the world differently, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
They represent different districts, and we're a very diverse state. And I think we respect that because we understand that how tough it was for us to get to the places that we are in the Texas Senate, and we respect the fact that whoever it is that got elected from that district, they had to go through that too.
Right.
But if you put undue priority on those issues, which really don't affect Texas families, that water infrastructure, transportation, education, and so education, the infrastructure of opportunity, that's what we needed to focus on. I think that we've really focused on that, and sure, we're probably coming to the point where we might see a few of those issues that are very divisive come up. I think one thing that could absolutely throw a wrench in this is if the Senate decided to take up redistricting. You know, whether or not what happens at the Supreme Court, if we are led to, you know, we've got to do this, it adds something that is cumbersome in a process that really is not necessary.
Do you have any reason to believe, Senator, that that's going to come back up?
I hope not. There has been discussions, and as you know, the Attorney General has made the opinion that it might be a good idea for us to come and certify past legislation that would keep intact the current lines. But the Supreme Court has not acted, and it takes away the priorities. And you know what happens in a legislative session when you've got redistricting. Just the mere fact of that, it sucks the air out of the room. It diverts our priorities. And there's so little time. 140 days, you've got so much political capital. If you're having to expend that on something that's not really relevant at this point, then you diminish what is the real work at hand.
Senator, that would be an issue. You know this issue well. This is an issue that would probably cause those partisan lines to harden again. But putting that to the side, there haven't been very many issues in which Republicans and Democrats have really been at incredible loggerheads.
Well, there haven't, but the fact of the matter is that the issues have been there. And the difference is that there are more members of the Senate who are willing to work together and to collaborate in reaching a consensus. For example, some of the Health and Human Services bills that might have been passed along party lines before, this time we went through a collaborative process and we improved the bills, we reached consensus, and we have more support for them. Even the budget, only 2 no votes. How many no votes were there last time? But you know what's made all the difference in the world? There was no serious, effective attempt to overturn the 2/3 rule. And we have 12 Democrats.
So by starting the session without
absolutely
undoing the tradition of the 2/3 rule.
We need 11 votes to block. You need 21 votes to bring up a bill.
So you all have enough. So there's an impetus for some kind of collaboration.
So we're at the table, and we can be effective, and we have an impact on legislation. We have an impact on the budget. That's made all the difference in the world.